Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin Sunday. We have two great guests, Senator Tom Cotton and Bernie Moreno, who I hope to call senator one day out of the state of Ohio. He's running against a Marxist socialist who always pretends to be a moderate when he's running. But we'll get to that in a moment. You know, folks, there are leaders and there are leaders. And there are statesmen and there are statesmen. Mark, what are you talking about? We have people in this country who are absolutely fabulous. We've had fabulous presidents. And what makes them so remarkable is they think out of the box. Donald Trump thinks out of the box. Donald Trump is and will be a historic and iconic figure, not from America's media today or today's authors, but 20, 50, 100 years from now, he'll get the acclaim that he deserves. Won't do him any good today, but one day that will happen. Why? Because he's a leader and he's a statesman. Just because he doesn't use Washington speak, just because he doesn't play by the rules of the ruling class establishment, which is a failure, which has turned on the American people and power hungry. It's because he's none of that he's iconic and historic. Ronald Reagan is an iconic, a historic individual. He thought outside the box. He didn't want détente with the Soviet Union. He wanted to defeat the Soviet Union. But he wanted to defeat the Soviet Union, not militarily, but economically, geographically, and every other way. And he would say things and think things that the same ruling class would attack all the time. You can see it when it comes to generals. General Patton versus other generals. You can see it when it comes to people in other walks of life who have just a different way of thinking. And it turns out when we look back, they're wiser and they're smarter, and they knew exactly what they were talking about. When it comes to national security and defense, Ronald Reagan was brilliant. He and others around him had an idea. What if we could come up with a system, a missile system, where a missile shoots a missile? A missile shoots a missile. And we'll call it the Strategic Defense Initiative. And I know this is so revolutionary, and I know Washington, the Democrat Party especially, and the national security and defense establishment, they'll fight me every step of the way. So I'm going to make a speech to the American people. I'm going to put my idea out there, the Strategic Defense Initiative. And I'm going to defend it, and I'm going to fund it, and I'm going to do everything I can to advance this, because this idea that I have, and some of the geniuses around me have, will make the world a better place. We'll be able to save nations from nuclear war and mankind. He was mocked. They tried to humiliate him. They called it Star Wars. First, I want to set this up. I want you to listen to President Reagan, thanks to the Reagan Library, in March 1983, where he makes the announcement. Go.
America does possess now the technologies to attain very significant improvements in the effectiveness of our conventional non-nuclear forces. Proceeding boldly with these new technologies, we can significantly reduce any incentive that the Soviet Union may have to threaten attack against the United States or its allies. As we pursue our goal of defensive technologies, we recognize that our allies rely upon our strategic offensive power to deter attacks against them. Their vital interests and ours are inextricably linked. Their safety and ours are one, and no change in technology can or will alter that reality. We must and shall continue to honor our commitments. I clearly recognize that defensive systems have limitations and raise certain problems and ambiguities. If paired with offensive systems, they can be viewed as fostering an aggressive policy, and no one wants that. But with these considerations firmly in mind, I call upon the scientific community in our country, those who gave us nuclear weapons, to turn their great talents now to the cause of mankind and world peace, to give us the means of rendering these nuclear weapons impotent and obsolete. Tonight, consistent with our obligations under the ABM Treaty and recognizing the need for closer consultation with our allies, I'm taking an important first step. I am directing a comprehensive and intensive effort to define a long-term research and development program to begin to achieve our ultimate goal of eliminating the threat posed by strategic nuclear missiles. This could pave the way for arms control measures to eliminate the weapons themselves. We seek neither military superiority nor political advantage. Our only purpose, one all people share, is to search for ways to reduce the danger of nuclear war. My fellow Americans, tonight we're launching an effort which holds the promise of changing the course of human history. There will be risks, and results take time, but I believe we can do it. As we cross this threshold, I ask for your prayers and your support. Thank you, good night, and God bless you.
Every step of the way from that speech forward, the Democrat Party tried to sabotage Reagan's effort. They tried to defund it through the budget process. They tried to put amendments in various defense bills to kill it. He refused to accept it. He pushed on. Gorbachev wanted to negotiate it out of existence. Reagan said, we'll negotiate the number of nuclear missiles. That's not up for negotiation. And that led in part to the collapse of the Soviet Union. And so what happened? A few years later, an egomaniac, a power-hungry politician who was eyeballing a run for the presidency, went to the National Press Club and attacked the whole idea, attacked Reagan, mocked it, the Strategic Defense Initiative, missiles, destroying missiles. And his name was Joe Biden. And here he is, Biden in 1986. Go.
This brings us to the administration's fifth myth, and surely the most remarkable in my opinion. Unable or unwilling to build on arms control progress of his predecessors, and under mounting public pressure as a result, the President in 1983 performed an astounding political act. Like the Baryshnikov of nuclear politics, he simply pirouetted and leaped over the entire issue, announcing a presidential vision that the American people could escape nuclear danger, not by arms control, but by erecting an anti-nuclear Astrodome over the United States of America. This immaculately conceived notion has obviously demonstrated that it has a certain mystical appeal. Unfortunately, it has no possibility of practicable implementation, as asserted by an overwhelming body of scientific opinion, by common sense, and even reportedly by Assistant Secretary Pearl in his private conversations with our allies. To say that Star Wars will not work, however, is far from calling it meaningless. For the President's quixotic initiative is already inflicting serious damage on American interest, in my opinion. It has confused our national debate, perhaps deliberately so, about the direction of American nuclear strategy. It has increased and misallocated our defense budget at a time requiring austerity and carefully established priorities, emphasizing the improvement of conventional forces. It has diverted valuable research and development resources at a time when the best American talent is now urgently needed in the civilian sector to strengthen our competitiveness in the global marketplace. And it has weakened the Atlantic Alliance by raising doubts about Americans' commitment to collective defense and also about the reliability of American leadership in the conduct of East-West relations. It has pushed the Soviet behavior the wrong way, inducing greater Soviet research on defense while raising the prospects of expanded Soviet missile forces to penetrate any U.S. defense that might be erected. And finally, for so long as it remains non-negotiable, Star Wars constitutes a major impediment to arms control. This multiplicity of negative consequences combines, in my opinion, into a single conclusion. Star Wars represents a fundamental assault on the concepts, alliances, and arms control agreements that have buttressed American security for several decades, and the President's continued adherence to it constitutes one of the most reckless and irresponsible acts in the history of modern statecraft. The past 6 years have demonstrated that the world can survive, in the short run, without progress on nuclear arms control. But while the Reaganites have propagated their smokescreen of mythology, what they have not done, what they could not do, is change the fundamental realities of the nuclear age. One may speculate that President Reagan has come to understand these truths. The compelling question about the remainder of his presidency is whether, given the competing voices and ideological forces within his own administration, he can and will act accordingly.
I didn't want to interrupt that because every syllable of that was wrong, wrong-headed. Notice how he's cynical. Notice how he personally attacks. But notice where we would be today if Biden had succeeded and Reagan failed. Israel would have been wiped off the face of the earth last April. Israel would have been wiped off the face of the earth last week. SDI is the greatest movement toward peace, the greatest advancement in military technology, maybe ever, but certainly one of the greats. And Joe Biden was on the wrong side of it. And there he was the other day in the Oval Office congratulating the Israelis and our Navy for taking out those missiles. Our Navy fired 12 missiles. Most of it was taken out by Israel. That said, our Navy, those two destroyers, wouldn't have had those missiles. Neither would Israel, but for Reagan's vision. We have another president who had a vision, and he created the Space Force. And his name is Donald Trump, for which he gets no credit. Because the old Russians are in space, the communist Chinese are in space, and we weren't. He said we need to have a special military service to deal with this. And one day he will be proven right as well. Now, there's one little country back then that decided, hey, United States, we would like to work with you on this technology. The Israelis are known for their exceptional ability to create advanced technologies, a tiny country with a lot of brilliant people. And the Congressional Research Service in 2000 said the Arrow anti-missile system has emerged as the centerpiece of Israel's missile defense effort. It was the first one. The program grew out of a U.S.-Israel Memorandum of Understanding signed on May 1986 that formalized Israel's participation in the U.S. Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI. And I don't need to go on at great length. Israel went on joint technological development to develop an entire dome over their country to protect every corner of their country, 3 different levels depending on the type of missile that's fired, using AI before anybody did, to make determinations about what type of missile to fire against, what type of missile, and so forth. The Israelis are also developing a laser system. I'm not violating any top secret information. That is also a game changer. And so that's what people do. That's what leaders do when they face reality. Joe Biden has been a failure his entire career. And if we had followed Joe Biden, whether it was early on with segregation and racism, if we'd followed Joe Biden when it came to missile defense, what kind of country would we have? Now, what does this have to do with Kamala Harris? Everything. She's actually worse than Joe Biden. I touched on this last weekend, but I didn't have enough time. From the Hill, Kamala Harris wants to be commander-in-chief. Here's what's on her short resume, Peter O'Rourke and Darren Selnick. So I just want to take a minute. Harris's work in the Senate displayed both a failure to understand how to best defend America and a disregard for the individual men and women who provide that defense. Look at this disaster, whether it's FEMA, money for illegal immigrants, whether it's taking money for housing for illegal immigrants away from veterans. I just want to be clear. In 2020, after Trump struck Soleimani, she voted to restrict Trump's ability to respond militarily to Iranian aggression. Before that, she voted against the bipartisan Strengthening America's Security in the Middle East Act of 2019. They gave military support to Israel and Jordan and imposed sanctions on Syria. She voted against a defense policy bill for fiscal 2019 for a 2.6% pay increase for service members. She didn't vote on the same bill the following year that offered 3.1% pay raise. The year after that, she voted against a 3% pay raise. Again, she would have destroyed TRICARE, the military system of health care. She's been a disaster for veterans. She opposes health care choice granted under the Bipartisan Mission Act. She co-signed a 2019 letter opposing the Trump administration plan to implement that law. And it goes on and on and on. And what's the position of Harris and Biden today? Israel, your response to Iran must be proportionate. Israel, you must enter into a ceasefire. Israel, you must do to yourself what we did to Afghanistan. They have slashed the military budget. That's what they've done in the face of China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. Slash the military budget. We're not making new technological advances. We're not even keeping up with what we used to have. We're missing our marks in terms of recruitment with the all-volunteer military, except for the Marines. And what does he tell Israel publicly? Publicly. Don't take out Iran's nuclear sites. When the rest of us are thinking, no, that should be the #1 target. Take out their nuclear sites for peace in the Middle East and the rest of the world. The man who opposed all those defensive missiles now opposes Israel taking out Iran's nuclear sites, when in fact, we have 30% of our Navy and all that firepower there, and we should tell Israel, take out their nuclear sites, we have your back. Now, get it over with. Because even the United Nations has said Iran is going to have a nuclear missile. A disaster across the board. This revolution by immigration that we see happening in our country, the economy. Oh, look at this. We've added more jobs than we thought. We added 5,000 more jobs per state. That's nothing to dance about. The active promotion of authoritarianism, how they oppose the Bill of Rights, the abuse of the justice system, how they're going after Donald Trump yet again with this outrageously left-wing Obama judge Chunkin and this unconstitutional prosecutor where they change words around, create semantical distinctions, put it on the public record right before the election. We've never seen anything like this. They're continuing to try to corrupt our voting system by changing the rules in the state, and they want to destroy the independence of the Supreme Court. They want to destroy separation of powers. They want to destroy the Electoral College. They want to destroy everything. Why? Because they're about power for the Democrat Party. Power for the Democrat Party means you cannot support the United States of America because it's country first, not Democrat Party first.